and monitor some comments. Let's see what we got. All right, we are up. We are live. Let's get it going. So I'm going to make sure we got both of us on here. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and do one more quick post in the event page as well. Make sure everybody knows where we're at. We're getting started. So super hyped to have you here, Tom. Run through this process. I know a lot of you guys, well, most of you guys were not here a year ago, but we did a similar goal planning workshop with Tom. Everybody loved it. Everybody started taking action on it immediately, and I know you guys will too. So first up, thanks so much for coming by.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, man. This is such an important topic, especially as we get to this time of year. So I'm glad to be able to share it with the community and help everyone else get through this process. Definitely.
Yeah, it's a super important one. And I know everybody can take away different things from this, especially if you kind of refined this framework. I know that's one thing I look up to you for is how you really lay things out, how you have clarity in what to expect, what's coming, and you're a lot more organized than I am. So I know I can learn from you. I know a lot of the other MEC members can learn from you as well. So yeah, thanks so much. And for everybody out there that doesn't know you too well just yet, you want to fill people in on your background, what you got going on?
Yeah, we got a lot going on, but very quick intro on our background. So my wife and I currently run 3 very different businesses. First one is real estate investing, and we've had it about 10 years. Second one is a wine and liquor store. I mean, how could you not like that? And had that about 5 years. And then our third one is a coaching and training business for entrepreneurs. So we basically had a lot of people come to us after we had the first 2 businesses. And oh, by the way, we have 2 kids. And so they were asking us, 1, how do you guys manage all the business stuff? How do you start a business? And then 2, how do you do that while having a family and while having all that going on? And so the process that we're going to run people through tonight is really what we've developed, 1, in our businesses, but then 2, prior to me really becoming a full-time entrepreneur, I had a career in IT and productivity and project management and leadership development. So this is kind of a merging of what's worked for us, what's worked for our entrepreneur clients, and then also what big organizations and companies do when they do their planning process.
Yeah. And that's really important to look at. I know, especially as younger entrepreneurs, there's a lot of us in this group who have been in business for, less than 5 years, a lot of us even less than 1 year. So when we have the perspectives of somebody who's worked with bigger businesses and see how they work, that can get translated over so well. And it's really, really cool to see how even solopreneurs and small teams, what's going on, Ariana?
We got a special guest.
Yeah, special guest. She showed up. Cool. Yeah, talking about how it's really cool how so many different things can translate from one business setting into another. But everybody has goals. Everybody needs to plan. So it's going to be really, really important for you guys to stick around, take these frameworks. I think you said you even have a kind of a free walkthrough video course of this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because what you guys will see as we go through this, so there's 6 steps, and offhand, they're not too complicated. But as you go through them, you might get some kind of hiccups. So we actually put a free video course out that takes each step, dives deeper, and walks you guys through the steps. So that way, if you're watching tonight, don't feel like you got to, take notes on everything and get it all implemented right away.
It's very overwhelming.
Yeah, definitely. No, yeah, it's a big process because everybody here has big goals. So we got to work through it and really get everything planned up for 2018. So quick question on that. What do you guys think is the most important thing about this session? Like, what do people need to know or take action on the most so that they can get the best results out of it?
Yeah, so I'm going to quote Marcus Lemonis, host of The Profit, and basically say, follow the process. So there's 6 steps here. They're laid out with a very specific reason. We've developed this and been refining this over our years as entrepreneurs. So you may not understand, or you may not think one of the pieces is important, but just trust the process, follow the process, and you'll get the results.
Yep, absolutely. And I know that's challenging because entrepreneurs love to wing it all the time. But guys, trust me, when you find stuff like this, and especially when you're putting it out for free, like there's no excuse why you guys can't go through this, give it a shot, and really try and lay everything out on paper. Because the first thing in reaching your goals is getting clarity on them. And I think that's what I really took away from the session from you guys last year, is really just trying to just put it on paper. Once you see it in front of you, it's going to be a whole lot easier. And like we said earlier, some of you guys might have missed this, but this was not the original vision board event. Unfortunately, our guest host had something come up, but luckily you guys were able to hop in. So super thankful you guys made the time. And I let you know 4 hours ago.
It's like, hey, what are you doing in a couple hours?
Yeah.
Hopefully putting our children to bed.
Yeah. Well, glad it worked out, and super hyped. So if you guys are hyped too, make sure you guys type goals in the comments so we can get a little algo juice and get more people into this workshop. And let's get it started. So how do we get started?
All right, perfect. So we actually got a presentation, some visuals to make this a little easier for you guys to follow. So just confirm, Arnie, that you can see the presentation.
I'm in.
All right, perfect. So as we said, this can be a little overwhelming. We'll go through each of these steps pretty quick. But Arnie, if you got questions or if people are typing questions up, we'll stay on at the end to answer everything. And, feel free to jump in and kind of walk through things together, share some of your experience.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
With this, what's really cool about, Ariana and I working together is that we're complete opposites.
So it's really cool.
Well, it's really cool when we can share it with you guys. When we try to do stuff together, it's like, oh my gosh, why are you asking that? But what benefit you guys are going to get from this is that I'm very analytical, very to the point, like let's go A to B to C. And what you'll see from Ariana is that she's going to give a different perspective. So part of the free training videos that you guys will get at the end of this is that it's actually Ariana walking through it. So you'll see both perspectives, and you might jive more with her. You might jive more with me.
Yeah.
All right. So plan with purpose. The whole reason that we named it this is that so many people put a plan together and they execute on that plan. They might have success, but it actually misses the mark of the big goals that they want to achieve. And so you guys have probably seen this. If you've built a business and it's taken over your life, or you lead to burnout, it's probably because you did really well with that plan, but it wasn't aligned with your life.
Yeah.
So you want to have those things aligned. And here's the 6 steps that we're going to cover tonight. So first, describe what you want your life to look like. A lot of people end up, having trouble with goals because they look at where they're at today and they start looking forward, and they set goals based on incremental milestones instead of really thinking about what's the end thing, what's the big goal that I want to achieve, and then working backwards. So once you've described what you want your life to look like, then you're going to start looking backward and saying, okay, well, let's define the roadmap. Let's define those key steps that you can take to get there. Then we're going to give you a little bit of that process. Now that you've got those things laid out, what's the process you can follow so when the rubber hits the road, you can actually make that progress? Prioritize. This is a big one. A lot of entrepreneurs have shiny object syndrome, or they have more tasks than they can get done. So we're going to teach you some strategies for how to prioritize everything that is on your to-do list. Progress. As you're really busy, as you're doing all these tasks, how do you know you're going in the right direction? So we'll give you some quick tips on that. And then finally, distill. So as all of this is laid out and you're ready to go, who do you have to be, and what are some of the mindsets you have to have so that you can crush these goals? And so with that, the whole reason that we're putting this together and the whole reason that you're going through these activities is to get more traction in your business and more clarity in your life. So that's what we're going to deliver to you guys in this session.
Awesome.
All right.
And clarity is so important because, guys, we've all been the confused entrepreneurs. We've all tried this, tried that, not really had, that clarity on the path. And we can really map it out like this and use this framework. It just makes everything so much easier. One thing I also really want to drive home for you guys is understanding that when you get clarity on your path, you get clarity on what's not on your path, and you're going to get all these opportunities that are coming at you left and right, especially as you scale up, you get more influence, more income. Everything is going to be screaming at you for your attention and for you to take action on it. But when you have clarity on your path and your goals, you know what fits and doesn't fit within that, what takes you further and what takes you off track. So take this one seriously. It will seriously help eliminate some of that shiny object syndrome and help you get more focused.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people come to me because I've done a lot of productivity work, especially with, teams and larger groups. And they ask, what's the biggest productivity hack? And it's really clarity. Because if you don't have clarity on what you're doing and what's important, you can be busy and you can be hustling 24/7. But if you're not doing the right things, it doesn't really matter. And you're going to end up leading to that burnout. All right. So, let's talk about Sam. And Sam is your typical guy. He's done all the things right in life. He graduated high school, he went to college, he got a job. And a lot of us can really relate to Sam because we're on that traditional path. Dale Hensel, who's in the group, he called it the human funnel. And it's how society tells us that we've all got to be set up and go. And, if you're in millennial, if you're in this group, you probably feel like Sam and the fact that you're like, there's more for me out there. There's more for life out there. And so at whatever point you come across that realization, that's when you're going to start thinking about, okay, well, what do I really want out of my life? And then how do I get it there? And so we have a family, and we ended up working a lot with families. So one of the things that we always tell people is that, sometimes you can just do this on your own. Let's say if you're single, but if you do have a family, you've got to consider them as part of this planning process that we're going to go through. And so the whole point of us doing this is we want you guys to have more out of life. We want you guys to have that life that you want. And we want to take away some of the stress and overwhelm and frustration that you guys might have today if business isn't going the way you want it to, or if, business is overtaking your life and you're like, man, I thought I started this business to get more time and to have more of those experiences. Okay, so hopping in, the first step is going to be describing what you want to have. And if we look at Sam, he says, I want to be an entrepreneur, but my spouse doesn't get it. Or if you don't have a spouse, maybe it's your family doesn't get it, right? Like when you go and step out onto this different path, you're going to have people that are going to tell you that's not the right thing to do, right? Or they're going to tell you that, that can't work. You can't make money online, right? Arnie, you can't make money online. You can't travel around the world. But the reality is people are doing it every day. And if that's what you want to do, realize that you can do it. But, you're on a traditional path now, and you got to change things to get to where you want to be. Because if you stay on the same path, you're likely going to have the same results you've already had. So before we get into this, we just want to talk about two common mistakes that people like Sam make. So the first one is they get all excited about this business and they end up starting a business, but they haven't really thought about how does that business tie into the bigger goals that they want for their life. And what happens here is that you might build a successful business, but oftentimes behind the scenes, your life kind of falls apart. I can't tell you how many entrepreneurs we've worked with that have been divorced or, they've missed out on these important aspects of their life while they built this business and then ultimately didn't find the happiness that they thought they would. And then the second one is not including their spouse or important family members or people in the conversation. Because I'll tell you, I was the guy that had the idea and then just heads down, went out and tried to do it. And it caused a lot of challenges for Ariana and I, because I was running down this path trying to make things work. And she was like, no, let's not do that. No, I'm afraid. No, that's not the right path for us. So once we got aligned and were clear on what was important, then it was so much easier for me to go out and start this business. And you guys will see now that not only is she not saying no, she's actually partnered on the business because this is building that life that we want. So these are two common mistakes that as you start this off, just start thinking about it and make sure that you don't fall into those. Okay, so what does your ideal life look like? I know the original workshop tonight was about creating a vision board, and that's part of what this activity is. So, some of the things you can start looking at are, what does your perfect day look like? Right? Like oftentimes we're so caught up in the rat race or what we're doing today that we don't take time to step back and say, what would I like my day to look like? Where would I like to live? What time would I like to wake up? What would I like to fill that day with? Who would I like to fill that day with? A second thing you can do is have that vision board, and we'll talk about that in a second. But really just understand the important things that you want out of life. And then looking at, what is important for you and your family and the people that are close to you. So there's a lot of different ways to create vision boards, and we like to go through this basic 4-part process. So what we found is that when people create vision boards, they tend to fall into kind of 4 main areas. So the first one is experiences, right? What experiences do you want to have in life? Where do you want to go? Who do you want to meet? Who do you want to be working with or associated with? What things do you want to do, with your family? What do you want, your dates to look like? Second is things, right? It's not bad to want nice things. So, is there a house that you want, or, do you want a certain car? Do you want certain hobbies and activities that you can do, right? And these are great, but what we find is that there's two that people often miss that really take this to the next level. And the third one is really the impact. So you're going to, and Arnie, you're probably seeing some of this now. So it's great to have the experiences. It's great to have the things. But what ultimately takes you to that next level is the impact that you can have on people, right? And so oftentimes when people build a business and they're not fulfilled, we find that coming back to what that impact that they want to have is and having them get clear on that then really helps take them to that next level. And finally, what are the things that you don't want to have or you don't want to do? So oftentimes we keep going after the things we want, and we have these things that we don't want to do that are holding us back. So calling those things out and what things you want to stop doing is just as important, if not more important, than calling out the things that you do want to do. So by going through this activity, you're going to outline, really the important things out of your life and start there and get clear. Okay. Step 2, now that you've, gone through that, now you need to define, what do I need to do to get there? So we're going to go back to Sam. And Sam says, perfect. I have a vision. I know what I want out of my life. I have that clarity. Now what the heck do I do, right? It seems so far away from where I'm at today. And so what we like to do is we talk to people about breaking your vision down into a roadmap. And what you want to do is figure out, how do the goals you have fit into a timeline to ultimately lead you to that life that you want? And part of this is you want to break them up and get to the smaller goals, because it can be overwhelming sometimes when you think about that big goal. But if you start breaking it down into smaller goals that you can act on in a shorter time period, it makes it a lot easier. And then finally, you want to be able to set up the system to track all of this so that as you're going through, you can continue to refine. So what I talk to people about a lot is that this is kind of like GPS, right? You're going to have a starting point, which is where you're at today. And then when you use GPS, you enter the destination. Where do you want to go? And what the GPS does is it maps out a plan for you. And then it's going to help you along the way to figure out, are you still on that plan, or have you maybe made a wrong turn, and it's going to tell you to come back. So this is what we like to do when we define a roadmap. So if you think about it, you've got your life vision kind of at the end of it, and you're going to identify the key things that you want out of life. And then what you're going to do is start breaking it down into different time periods. Now, we start out with 10 years and 5 years and go all the way down to the next 90 days. The time frames aren't so important, but what's important is that you have basically short, medium, and long-term goals. Because a lot of people will talk about like 90-day goals, which are great. And you'll see on here that we actually have 90-day goals. The problem is if you're only focusing on 90 days at a time and you're not tying those 90-day goals into your bigger goals, you might find that you kicked ass on the 90-day goals, but then you looked out a year and you were going in the wrong direction. So we want to make sure that everything is directionally oriented so that you're on the right path. So once you have the vision laid out, what you're then going to start doing is saying, okay, well, what are some of the milestones or the sub goals that are going to step me towards that vision? So in this case, let's say that one of the things you want to do is quit your job. You're going to go through and kind of lay out your different goals. And we actually like to physically do this on a wall, because when we do this, we might say, okay, well, I want to quit my job in the next year. And then as you start laying out your other priorities in life, you may say, you know what, that's great, but my next year is going to be crazy. Maybe a more realistic time frame for me is 3 years, and then I can fit some of my other goals in the meantime and work towards it. So it doesn't so much matter about, once again, those time frames, but just making sure that you're not overloading yourself and you're prioritizing which goals you want to achieve first and then what you'll do after that. And then so finally, once you have those major goals broken out, then you can start breaking those down even smaller and saying, okay, well, what are the milestones for me to get there? So in this case, quitting your job might be a 3-year goal, and you'll see that maybe there's some other goals that people got to take care of ahead of time. So we were working with someone who basically had a lot of stuff going on in their personal life, and they wanted to start a business and quit their job, but it was actually better off for them to focus on getting their personal life in order first. So they said the next 2 quarters would be that. And then they could focus on these incremental milestones to build their business to quit their job. So this is just one example, but you should be able to come up with your own roadmap like this that has your vision, your goals, and then the steps to get there.
I'm back. Sorry.
Welcome back.
Sick children that didn't want to go to sleep.
So as you guys can see, this is where this starts to become...
This is life, by the way.
This is life. Yeah, I know. Things don't always go as planned, and then you adjust and adapt and improvise and overcome. All right, so we've gone through the first 2 steps. You've got a vision, you've got a roadmap, and now you got to create the process, right? So if we go back to Sam, he says, perfect. I have a vision, a roadmap. I am happy. But life happens. That was perfect timing.
Perfect timing. I planned that. Totally.
Right? Things don't go as planned. So this is where you want to set check-in points. So we talked about this process being like GPS, and Ariana loves maps. I suck at maps. I love GPS. And the reason I love GPS is that when I make a wrong turn, a map doesn't tell me that, and I'll go down the wrong road for miles without knowing. But when I make a wrong turn, I've got my GPS on. It says, hey, dummy, you're supposed to turn left there. Now I'm going to navigate you back to where you should be. So these check-in points are going to do the same thing for you. You want to get consistent because consistency allows this momentum to keep going. And then just know that whatever plan you initially lay out, it's not going to work that way. But the important thing about having the plan is to understand kind of where you're going and then to be able to adjust that plan at points in time. And then finally, where we've been using this process for a long time, we want you to start simple, so don't get overwhelmed. And then, make tweaks or adjust the process as you figure out what works and what doesn't work for you. Okay, so this might seem a little overwhelming, but these are essentially the key meetings that we have and we recommend to all of our clients. And so what you'll see here is that when we get into it, each meeting is really following the same basic process. So it's let's reflect on the previous time period. So for example, if you're doing annual goal planning, your reflection should be, how did 2017 go, right? Yep. What went well? What didn't go well? We just finished
ours last week.
Yeah, we just went through this process. And then what improvements do you want to make next year? What changes do you got to make next year based on the things that didn't go well this year, right? You can review some of your metrics and your goals and just kind of see how you did. And then using that information, you're going to plan out the next year and kind of plan that out going forward. So now if we start looking, we're going to break that down, and every 90 days, you're going to do the same process. But now instead of looking at the whole year, you're just looking at the last 90 days.
Yep.
And then you're going to plan out the next 90 days. So this is where you get the long-term vision and roadmap, but then you make adjustments every 90 days. And then if we break that down even further, once a month you can do this meeting. And this is where you can say, review your monthly metrics. You can set your budget for next month. Mm-hmm. And then if you're doing these 90-day planning sessions, this gives you 2 opportunities between those 90-day sessions to really make adjustments if you're just not on track to hit your goals. Mm-hmm. And then this is where really the magic happens. Every week, we basically break our stuff down into these 1-week sprints. So if you're familiar with Scrum or Agile, essentially what this is saying is that you're going to plan all of your work within these 1-week timeframes. And then every week, your goal is to complete that work and then move on to the next week. So this is what really makes those big goals down into the actionable steps to help guide you and help avoid like the shiny objects that come up.
Yeah.
And then finally, our last meeting is a daily meeting. So this is like a 10 or 15 minute meeting every day where you're just checking in. Like, did you get all the stuff done yesterday that you thought you would? What are the key and important things you got to get done today? And then is there anything getting in your way? Because oftentimes what will happen is something small will get in our way and we won't focus on it or call it out, and it'll just keep getting in our way and stopping us from making progress. So any thoughts on these meetings since we've been implementing these and going through them?
I think it's very easy to get overwhelmed with all the meetings. And obviously there's 2 of us, so we have the advantage of, we actually have someone to meet with that is standing right next to us. And when you're in the online space, I know it can be tough because you feel lonely and you may not have like a business bestie that you can have meetings with, but find an accountability partner. If you're in groups like this and somebody else is going through the program, you can quickly set up just a virtual chat and say, hey, I want to do my monthly check-in with you so that I have somebody to hold me accountable. You can there's different ways to do it, but once you get used to it, it's easier to do it on your own. But I think when you first get started, it's essential to have somebody to help you.
Yeah. I mean, what we end up doing with a lot of our coaching clients is we'll have like a 90-day program with them. And part of it is to help them actually achieve their results. But we also teach them this process and start to make it a habit. So when they get into the next 90 days, they know the process and they're just going through that. Right. So if you've seen, there's a lot of like planning programs out there now this time of year. A lot of those programs will go through the same type of thing that we're sharing with you guys here.
Yeah.
All right. Halfway there. Step 4. So this is a big one. How do you prioritize and plan? And so Sam, we're going to go back to him. He says, awesome. I've got the timeline and I've got all the big things planned out. How do I figure out what to work on next? When do I actually do all of this, right? Like I've got a lot of stuff going on. You might have a job, you might have a family, you have a life and hobbies. Like how do you fit all this stuff in? And then how do you know what to focus on, right? How do you have that clarity? How do you not let the shiny objects or, the newest podcast or something else really throw you off because it sounds good? And that's probably one of the biggest issues that I think most entrepreneurs have is
it's because you're all the idea people.
I know we are.
That's where I come in. I'm the reality checker.
You are.
I tell you, you're nuts.
Yeah. Well, and the problem is just about all the stuff you hear, it probably works, but you've got to make sure you're picking the right things for you and that are going to get you to your goals. So I'm going to let Ariana go through this in a second, but a brain dump is one of her favorite activities to help us get past this.
This is the reason that I've allowed Tom to install whiteboards on the entire walls in our basement.
Yeah.
But they're really helpful because I'm one of those people, I'm very visual and I need to get things out so that I can then see them and organize things. So a brain dump is one of the quickest ways for me to get all the overwhelm that's in my head out somewhere so that I can look through and say, okay, some of these things are ridiculous. I don't need to worry about them. Some of these things are longer term and I can put them out further on the roadmap. And some of these things I need to focus on right now. But when they're all in your head, sometimes it's hard to think that through and you get overwhelmed and you're like, oh my God, how do I pick an idea? I've got 10 million.
I was going to say, we have an awesome example coming up.
One
of your actual brain dumps. So then once you get the brain dump, you're going to take all those ideas and really organize them into different projects or different ideas. And then finally, you're going to help organize it. And we're going to give you some strategies so that you can plan your week out.
Somebody's joining us.
There we go.
Oh, my dog.
Hi, puppy.
I'm sure ours will be coming around soon.
Everybody say hi to Maggie. Can you guys see Maggie? Say hi. She wants to go out.
All right, so I'm going to let Ariana share this beautiful brain dump that she has done.
So obviously one of the reasons that we have a lot of complexity into our planning is because we not only have our personal lives and one business, we have 3 businesses. And one of those businesses has a couple different areas. So when I do a brain dump, I like to first organize it into specific items. So obviously personal is all in one space. And I literally write down everything that I'm thinking of. It could be years from now. It doesn't matter. If it's on my brain and it's in my head, it goes on the board. And then I categorized it out into each business. And then what that allowed us to do was walk through every item listed on there. And you'll see the little dots next to them. That's how we went through and prioritized out of everything on this list. What are the main items that we feel we need to worry about? So that's when we walk through, we pick out, okay, those are the priorities. And we can move on from there. Oh, yeah. And I have a child calling me again.
All right.
I'll be back.
And so, one of the key things of doing this, and people always ask us, is they're like, what tools do you guys use? And the reality is we try to keep the simplest tools possible, especially when we're doing this. So Ariana mentioned we have whiteboards everywhere because it's so much easier just to dump this all out on whiteboards, organize it, use Post-it notes. And then once we have clarity, then we can put that back into a system that makes it easier to track and more automated. So once you got the brain dump done, then what you're going to do is start grouping these. So we like to group all of our personal tasks. And you may be thinking, well, if you guys are in business, why are you talking about personal tasks? And we believe that, everything you do in life, and your life should come first, and your business should support that. So identifying the personal tasks, make sure that they don't get lost, and you're putting those first. Then we like to break, if you got a single business, break it up into what are the tasks you need to do to sustain that business. So basically, not worry about growing it at all, but just to keep it running. And then what are the tasks that you got to do to actually grow that business? And part of laying it out this way is that you actually want to, as time goes on, focus less on the sustaining tasks. And you, as the entrepreneur, as the business owner, want to focus on the growth tasks. So, Arnie's had a lot of good training in here about, outsourcing and delegating. That's what you want to do with these sustaining tasks. And then the growth tasks are where you, as the entrepreneur, add the most value. And so as you're grouping all of these, what you want to look at and really prioritize is what is urgent and important, right? So what are the things that need to get done within the next 1 or 2 weeks? And they're important to do. They're high value. They're going to move your personal life forward, and they're going to move your business forward. And then all the other stuff, the non-urgent stuff and the important stuff, you're going to move that down. You're going to push that out. And a lot of people struggle with this, but if you're trying to do everything, you're going to move a lot of little things forward and get them partially done, but you're not actually going to complete the most important things. So you're going to sabotage yourself. Okay, so now this is one of my favorite tools for helping to prioritize and figure out, okay, what is important, and then what do I do with each of these activities? And it's called the Eisenhower quadrant. And so basically what it does is you look at all the tasks you have and you say, is this important or not important? And is this urgent or not urgent? And once you label each of your tasks this way, this will then tell you what to do. So if you have an urgent and an important task, do it. Like, it's important and you got to do it right now. If it's important, but it's not urgent, you're going to schedule it for the right time period. So, Arnie calls me up 3 hours ago and says, hey, can you jump on and do this training? Well, that's important and urgent, so I'm just going to do it, right? But if we had coordinated this, he might have said, hey, do you want to do this in a couple of weeks? I could plan it out on my calendar, and then I don't have to worry about today. Then we get to the not important stuff. So if it's not important, but it's urgent, that's where you want to delegate it. You want to have somebody to handle those things so that day to day, you're not getting thrown off in your business. And then if it's not urgent and not important, this might be tough for you guys, but you actually want to get rid of it. Because 1, you're never going to get to it anyways. And 2, it's just cluttering up. Your brain is cluttering up, and not allowing you to focus on those important and urgent things. So you want to just get rid of it. And I'll promise you, if it truly is important and you get rid of it, it's going to pop back up, right? So don't worry about it going away and then like your business crumbling. That's not going to happen. Okay, so now we want to talk about how do you actually organize the work that is important and urgent and plan your week. So I'm a huge proponent of Scrum and Kanban and really all these agile planning methods. So the way that a lot of people used to plan, or if you've come from corporate, how you might plan is you put out this giant sheet, you list every task you need to do, and you plan out the next year. Now, there's a couple problems with that. 1, that takes a lot of time and it's tough to predict. And then 2, once you start working on things are going to change. And then that whole plan has to be redone. So by focusing on that 1 week chunks, what you can do is actually define the tasks that you got to get done this week. And then you can use the simple board of here's all the things I have to do. Here's the things I'm doing now. And then here's the things I've completed. So you're going to keep this simple. You're going to focus on just 1 week at a time. And then here's a key thing. You may think you're good at multitasking, but the reality is we can't multitask. Our brains really can only focus on one thing at a time. So when you're multitasking, your brain is just, jumping back and forth. But the problem is there's something called a context switch. And so basically every time your brain jumps from one task to another task, you end up losing time because you got to refocus. Ariana gets pulled away because the kids are upstairs not feeling good and crying. And now she's got to come back in and be like, okay, well, where's Tom at? What section am I jumping in? So every time you switch tasks, you end up losing time. So if you can focus on one task and getting that done, one, you're going to be a lot more productive. Two, you're going to actually see tasks getting completed instead of what happens to a lot of people where you might have worked on 8 different tasks today, but you didn't actually finish any of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get to the end of the day and you're like, man, I'm exhausted, but like nothing got done. But if you focus on 1 to 2 tasks at a time, you're going to consistently move those forward. And even if you didn't get all 8 done, you might get 7 done. And then you feel a lot more productive.
Yeah, I used to be horrible at with multitasking.
Most of us are.
Now I still do it sometimes, but now that we have our Kanban board, I'm much better at staying on task because I'm like, oh shoot, what am I supposed to be doing?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like
check the board.
This can really drive everything you're doing and help you avoid shiny object. So if something new comes in, you ask, is it important and urgent that I got to get it done this week? If not, you put it out for the future and then you reevaluate it.
Yeah.
And then finally, when you move things into done, don't get rid of them, because when you do that review at the end of the week, you're going to be able to look back at this board and say, okay, did I get everything done that I thought I was going to? What things didn't get done? Let me figure out why. Did I overload my week? Did things come up that ended up preventing me from doing work? And then based on what is causing me not to get stuff done, what do I change next week so that things are a little bit smoother, so that I don't run into as many issues? Yeah. And then that is the critical piece of this, is that every week you should be getting a little bit better and making your processes a little bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Step 5 out of 6. We're almost done, guys.
And that's so key, though. Really, that whole reflection of it is, I think, one of the biggest missing pieces for a lot of people. I know it had been for me in the past, where it's just like I'm totally in my element, winging it and getting shit done and still being very productive, getting results. But the reflection period is where you figure out what's actually working. So super excited to see how you have this set up for this section too.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a potential coaching client on a call today, and she was telling us, she's like, I had talked to somebody in March and we had set a goal to leave my job by the end of the year. And so I said, okay, perfect. How's that going? And she's like, well, I've done a bunch of stuff, but I'm actually not any closer to leaving my job. And just like you said, that reflection period, especially if you're doing it every week, you're going to see that, hey, at the end of April, I'm not on track. I got to do something different.
Yep.
But without reflecting, you could be spending a long time and then be very disappointed at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do we make sure that doesn't happen? Track your progress. Yep. So Sam says, this looks great, but Sam, he's always got excuses. How do I know I'm actually getting closer to my goals, right? If I have the goal to leave my job, how do I know I'm getting there? And then, what a lot of people say when we start talking about tracking is they say, well, not everything's trackable, or I don't know what metrics to track.
Yep.
So the first thing you want to do is you want to be assigning some metrics to be looking at, and we'll help you with that in a second. And then you want to figure out how and when should you be measuring those metrics. You can go crazy and be like clicking refresh every minute and being like, hey, is Arnie's course group stuff working? Am I getting new members in?
Mm-hmm.
Or you can never look at them and never realize how you're doing. So you need to pick the right metrics and then look at them at the right time. And then, your metrics are going to tell you when things are working and when things aren't. And then you want to be able to figure out, what do I do if things are off track? So with assigning metrics, and this is going to be very appropriate because Arnie is the Facebook groups guy, right? So what we're going to talk about is a very simple, let's call it a very simple funnel, right? So we get people into our Facebook group, and then from our Facebook group, we want to get them on our email list. And then ultimately we want to use that to sell them our products and services. So 3 very simple metrics we can use is, first, how many new members are we getting into our Facebook group every week? So it might look something like this, and this would be probably pre-Arnie's course, because afterwards, you can add some zeros to those numbers. So, week 1, maybe I get 20 people in my group. Week 2, I get 15. Week 3 was terrible. I only got 5. And then week 4, it's up to 30. Okay, well, now I'm starting to see a little bit of how my business is doing, right? And then if I go next, okay, well, so the next step is I want to get people on my email list. So how does that look each week? Well, week 1, it's great. And then it really drops off week 2. And once again, week 3 is terrible. I mean, did I just take week 3 off? I don't know. And then we can see week 4 starting to step back up. So now I'm starting to get a better view of how did the last month of my business go. And, really what we're looking at here is, so getting new people in my Facebook group, that's great, but it's not making me money. Getting new people on my email list, it's great, but it's not making me money. Or is it? Right? So now the third thing we want to look at is, well, how many sales did we have? And so we can see in this case that we can correlate how many people are getting into, the Facebook group or on our email list and whatever other activities we're doing with how many sales we're able to make. And the key thing here is that a lot of people will just look at the sales and then not know, what did I do that caused me to get more sales this week? And what did I not do that caused me to get less sales? So now if we're starting to look at this, we can say, whatever I did or didn't do on week 3, I don't want to do that again. Correct. Because it didn't help me at all. But I can see that in week 1 and week 4, things were going well. I was getting new group members. I was getting new people on my email list, and I was selling products. So by looking and understanding this information, you can now say, I need to do more of this in my business. I need to do less of this in my business. And when you test things out, you can tell what's working and what's not. So you initially didn't like metrics. It was overwhelming.
I'm not a numbers person.
What are your thoughts now as we've been using these?
Well, there's obviously a reason for it. And I think it's something that's difficult to jump into. It kind of takes a little bit of getting over. If you're not a numbers person, it's very overwhelming for somebody to give you numbers and then look at you and say, okay, what do you think? Because when we do our planning sessions, it's always, okay, what number are we going to set? And Tom is notorious for being the person to set the number out there. And then I'm notorious for going, oh crap, how are we going to do that? But over time, consistently setting metrics for ourselves that are connected to the goals that we've set have actually made the numbers less scary for me, because I'm seeing how the things that we're doing are directly correlating to how much of our goals we're reaching, how far we're getting, how close we're getting to reaching those goals each time we set them. So I think for me, even though it's still a little bit overwhelming, the numbers have that motivational factor behind them, because you can actually see your progress. It's not like, oh, well, yeah, I've got a lot of new members. It's like, no, I've had 2,000 new members. I actually know the number because I've been tracking it. Same thing with your email list or sales or whatever metrics you happen to be measuring. But for me, it's definitely been a big motivator, and I think it gives you that momentum.
Yeah, well, and coming back to clarity, which is what Arnie was talking about at the beginning, when you have clarity on the end result and then you start working backwards, you get clarity on what you have to do each week. So, for example, let's say that you're going to launch a new program and you want to get 20 members into your beta launch. Right? So that's the end goal that you're looking for. So let's start working backwards. Well, how are we going to get 20 members in there? Well, what if you put a wait list up and then you've talked to other people and you found out that, the conversion rate from people on their wait list, if you follow this process, ends up being 25%. Okay, well, so now if you want to get 20 sales, you multiply or divide that out and you realize that you got to get 80 people on your wait list. Okay, well, how are you going to get the 80 people on your wait list? Well, that, let's say for every one person or every 100 people that come to your website, 25 people, that same 25%, opt into, your email list. Okay, well, so now you can start figuring out, okay, well, I've got to get 400 people to my website. How am I going to do that? Well, I've got 4 weeks this month, so I have to get 100 people to my website each month or each week. Okay, well, so I got 7 days a week. Let me break that down. Okay, well, I only have to get 30 people to my website each day. So now it makes it very easy to figure out what's that daily target. And then you can start looking at the activities or what your calendar looks like that day and say, what am I going to do to get 30 people to my website today? And then am I converting at 25% so that I'm building that wait list? So when I launch, I'm pretty, sure that I'm going to get those 20 sales. I mean, imagine if you had that clarity in, your sales process or any process in your business. It now makes it so much easier to focus on what key activities you have to do to get those results that you're looking for. So this is part of where this does get, a little bit overwhelming if it's the first time you've done it. But the biggest thing that we tell people to do is define the end result, which is, let's say, sell 20 products, And then define the key activities that are going to predict whether you sell those 20 products, and then focus on doing those key activities, right? So it might be, doing Facebook Lives to build up your video views audience and then retargeting them with the Facebook ads. It might be emailing your list and growing that. But whatever those, leading activities are, you want to do those and track those, because those are going to help you. And if you guys have questions, we'll be here all night. Reach out afterwards. We'll help you with any of this stuff. Well, we do have some booze here, so we could be here a while. All right. So with that, you want to identify how and when to measure. So you're going to want to figure out, what tools and methods are you going to use. So if you're doing stuff online, the beautiful thing is there's a ton of good tools out there that will automate this for you. Some of the things won't be automated and you'll have to manually track them. But starting out, you just want to get the right metrics, and then you can figure out how to automate them later. You'll notice that when we were showing that last graph, we weren't showing the total number of members in our Facebook group. We were showing the change week over week. Yeah. Because if you see on here, your total members is probably never going to go down. And if it is, you should really go and talk to Arnie, because that shouldn't. But it's always going to go up. So if you're just looking at the total number of members, you can't really tell if your marketing efforts are really impacting that. But if you look at, the new members or the change in members every week, that's where you can start to see, well, I got a lot this week and a little this week. What did I do differently? And how do I do more of the stuff that got me a lot? Mm-hmm. So a lot of people will look at the vanity metrics, the ones that always go up, but they don't actually give you any information or allow you to do any action. So you want to look at the ones that are going to be actionable, tell you and give you insights into your business so that you can make a change or do more of what's working. And then finally, you want to check in on your numbers at least weekly. So there's going to be some numbers, like, for example, maybe new members in your Facebook group. You want to track week over week to see how that's doing. There might be some numbers that you only track every month or every quarter, but you'll start to figure out, what are the right numbers to track when. And then what happens when you're tracking your numbers and things don't add up. So the first thing is maybe your goals or expectations are too high. Hopefully this isn't the case, but sometimes you'll find out that you've just got so much other stuff going on, or, the time frame maybe was too soon. So you want to push it out a little bit. But what's most likely happening is that something's getting in the way, or something that you're doing isn't necessarily, correlating or letting you achieve those results. So you want to use that weekly reflection to say, what's not working? What's causing this not to have the conversion rate that I want? And how do I change that? And then another thing that comes up is what type of metrics you're gathering. So it's great to be able to run surveys and to, see that maybe new people aren't joining my Facebook group, but it's not going to necessarily tell you deeper on why is that the case. So the quantitative metrics are basically the things you can put in a spreadsheet and view, but sometimes you got to go and look at the qualitative metrics. So if you're not selling your course, you may want to jump on a call with someone that you think is a really good fit that didn't buy, and just start asking them questions. So it's going to take a little bit more time, but the insights you're going to have from talking to somebody is usually going to give you different insights than just, running a survey or maybe asking some questions through an email. So you might want to look at both of those metrics depending on what you're trying to do. And then finally, you always want to start at the earliest point of your process or your funnel. So for example, let's say your sales funnel had 5 steps. If people are dropping off at step 2, there's no sense in you optimizing step 4, because guess what? Most people aren't making it there. So you always want to start at the point where people are dropping off or where the issue is, and you fix that. And then that might expose another issue later on, but you start at the earlier one.
Which means you need to.
Absolutely. I got a cool example of this one for you guys too. So one thing that I have been planning a lot for is for scaling a ton of stuff and really designing my system, my team, to be able to handle 10 times the amount that it is handling now. So it's always good to kind of get that type of stuff in place before you really need it. Like they always say, hire before you really need it, because as the little things start to add up, and then boom, one day I might, get featured in Business Insider and get, 1,000 new customers in a day or something crazy. And that'd be awesome. But what the heck would happen after that? Would I even be able to handle all those new people? So what I had to do recently was really take a look at my customer support system and look at a few different layers of it. Number one, I'm the business owner. I don't want to be answering customer support. So for a while now, that's been in the corner of my amazing assistant, who is helping out with support tickets and getting things, getting people covered with what they need to get covered. The only things that ever come through to me are things that only I can take care of. Anything like a billing or a receipt or something where it's like it really needs my feedback. That's on me. But anything else, the majority of that stuff she can take care of. So those are the top two levels that gets her attention, and then that gets my attention. But way below that, we have a few different things, guys. So very first step in all of that is pre-communication. So before anybody ever says, oh, I need to submit a support ticket, there are things we can put in place to help them avoid ever needing to do that. So what we decided there was, okay, before people get stuck, where are they getting stuck? What parts of them being a customer, them being in my group, them being in the members area, all these different things are prompting people to say, I need more help. And then we can see, okay, so maybe we didn't make this clear enough right here that this is what they need to do. So let's go ahead and reword that. And see if that drops the amount of people reaching out for that issue. So that is the very basis of it that automatically decreased tickets. Second thing we did was we created this really cool chat bot that handles the top 3 things people need support tickets around, and it handles them on autopilot. And if they still continue to get stuck after going through the steps and the FAQs, then they can go ahead and submit a support ticket. But that's already decreased the amount of tickets we get by a lot. So just take a look at those root causes. And for me, that was saying, okay, things aren't adding up. I think we're getting too many support tickets. This should be fixed. I want it to be more efficient. I want it to run better. So we just had to really review the whole thing. And you guys can do this too. Use this process, go through it, and like you said, start at the beginning. That's a super smart move.
Yeah, I was gonna say I love the fact that the example you showed was just a process. So you can take any process in your business and use this. And other examples like if people are subscribed to like Audible or if you're using ClickFunnels, go through the cancellation process and just see what they do. So a lot of times, it's easier to maintain a customer than to try to get a new one. So if you try to cancel like Audible, it's going to say, sorry to see you go. Why are you canceling today? And it's going to give those top, reasons that people cancel. And then guess what? Whereas like today, it might have to come to you to say, well, do this or do that. What they've been able to do is say, okay, well, let's map that out. And if someone says that they want to cancel because it costs too much, let's actually handle that objective and give them a different way that maybe it's cheaper or whatever. So they end up reducing the churn rate that they have, and all of that's automated because they've gone through this process. Yeah, so really cool stuff once you kind of get in and really see that. And it has a significant impact on your business too.
Yeah, especially when you do it rapidly. That's one thing that I really like, especially with everything from split tests or marketing campaigns and things like that, where I recently launched the group funnels for the second beta round. 70 spots left, just a heads up, guys. But what we did there, so the first round, we sold out 100 seats in like 3 days, and I was super hyped, but it all happened so fast. We only had one order page, and everybody went through it. So this time I thought, all right, let's try and get this a little more granular and really try and understand, okay, what's working. So we tried a couple of different variations in the pages, watched like as people hit the page, checked out, didn't check out, tried different tweaks, tried different things, and noticed immediately huge differences. Like one order page had a 7% checkout where the other one had a 4%. So I was like, wow, that's almost double just off of one tweak. So I want you guys to really keep that in mind. There's a lot of things that you don't know whether it's going to affect something or not. The funny thing is that was actually an assumption of mine that, oh, this page is going to do way better. And it was the opposite. So that one, I had like a big long FAQ section of the 5 things that people were asking about. And I think it just got people more confused or something, and it slowed them down, and then they, clicked off the page or whatever else. So keep that in mind, guys. Test everything out, and really just have that analysis as often as you can.
Yeah, I was gonna say two key things you just said there. One is all business really is we have a series of assumptions and we want to test them out. And the biggest thing that gets people in trouble is when they have an assumption that they think is true and it's not, but they just keep going forward like it is. So the faster that you can prove those assumptions true or false, the faster and more successful you're going to be. So like just a quick example, and then we'll move on. But Intuit several years ago, for anyone that's in like software development, most organizations during their busy time will actually freeze all of their code. They won't put any new releases out. So what that meant was that Intuit had to put all their tax software out there, and then after tax season, they could analyze the data, make changes for next year, and then implement it. But then one year, what they did was they actually said, well, instead of waiting a year, let's look at the data real time. And then just like you said, if one thing is checking out higher than another one, let's make the change like now so we can take advantage of it. And they ended up selling a lot more. They ended up having happier customers because they were more responsive and were able to do those things faster.
Absolutely. Move fast.
Yeah, move fast. Absolutely. And the thing is with moving fast, you're going to fail, and you're going to fail a lot more often. But guess what? You're going to fail on a smaller scale. And then those smaller failures and then tweaks are going to allow you to ultimately have more success.
Absolutely. And when you can kind of batch stuff up like that, like I have a couple of different email lists, and I remember just yesterday I sent one email out to a list. I was like, oh, this is going to be a good email. And then it was low open, low click. I was like, cool, I'm not reusing that one.
Yeah, and now imagine if you didn't look at those metrics, right? What would you do? You might just say, yeah, this is a great email. I'm going to keep sending it. And then things aren't working in your business. You're like, why? But you know what information you're looking at, and you're making tweaks off of that. That's huge.
Absolutely. And I'll give you guys a cool hack on that real quick. One thing I've done, especially after you guys have an email list, a Facebook group, a chat bot for a while, is you can check the performance of your past emails, broadcasts, posts, any of that, and reuse some of the content. You guys got to remember there's consistently new people coming into your sphere and starting to get to know you. Or people previously, they might not have caught that email or that post or that bot message. So you can reuse some of your stuff. I especially do that with email headlines. So if I go in and I look and say, wow, that one had a 40% open rate, I'm going to use that one and find some top performing things that you've done in the past. So you're looking at those assumptions and then reusing them. This actually is going to help you guys save so much time in creating content and having marketing that works because you've already proven it. So be a scientist, test things out. You're going to have some stuff that fails, but once you find those ones that really work, keep using them.
Be a scientist.
Love it.
I
love it. All right. So the last step we got here is really distilling who you need to be. So we're going to go back to Sam, and he says, I'm in Millennial, I'm in all these groups, and I just see so many successful people. People are talking about leaving their jobs. People are talking about, the success they're having in business. And I feel like they know so much, and who am I? Or I'm brand new to this. I don't know that. And so, Sam's thinking, well, how do I get there? And one of the key things that you need to do is really figure out, who do you need to be to have that success? So there's a couple activities that we like to run people through. Be to have, looking at where you're at now, and then some of the identity shifts or mental shifts you'll have to make. So, I see this a lot in Millennial, Arnie, as we have a lot of younger, more inexperienced entrepreneurs coming in. They look at this, and there's this activity called be to have. And there's ways that we all look at the world. So you can call it a victor versus a victim. You can call it abundance versus scarcity. But the paradigm is basically the world is here, you're here, and you've got a view on that. Now, people that aren't successful are going to have a paradigm of looking at someone who is successful and start making excuses. So they can say, well, of course Arnie's successful, like he's got this large Facebook group. Or of course that person's successful, they went to Harvard, or whatever the excuse is. People that have that paradigm are always going to take power away from themselves and come up with an excuse. And they're likely not going to be successful. But the ones who are successful will take a look at that situation and say, man, Arnie's got a Facebook group of like 40,000 people. I wonder how he did that. I wonder what things he had to do to get there. And then once you figure out what that person has to do, then you have to start to ask and say, okay, well, who do you have to be able to do those things, right? Well, Arnie, you can't be doing customer support if you're going to have 10x growth next year, right? So now you start thinking about, okay, if I want to be the person that has 10x growth, I need to be doing these things and not doing these things. And in order to do that, I have to have this mindset or this mentality. That's how successful people think. And that's what we want you to go through with this process. Figure out what you want to have, map out the roadmap to figure out what you got to do. And then the key piece now is you can have all that stuff in place. But if you don't have the right mindset or you don't realize how you need to act today to make that stuff happen, it's not going to happen.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing you said in all of that is the successful people ask how. And that is something that I went through myself in 2016, where I was really trying to, figure out how to make my online business work, scale it up, get things going. And I would see a lot of people around me being very successful. And some of them even in the same training programs that I was in, and they were getting successful. And I was like, wow, like that guy joined after me. Like what's wrong with me? What happened? And then it finally turned into, okay, so he's no different than I am. We both have the same training. We're both, roughly the same age, about the same experience, business. How did he do something differently than me? And when I started thinking like that, I started thinking what I needed to do next to really be able to level up and get those next results. But if you're always distancing yourself from success instead of bringing yourself closer to it and really trying to understand it and see what's making people tick, you are always going to put yourself in the box. So I really want you guys to look at those people who are successful, that have what you want to have, that are just absolutely crushing it, and realize that you are no different than them. They are just further along than you. Break it down backwards, guys. That's what this whole thing is all about. And yeah, awesome to really consider and understand that you are no different than anyone. There's just a different process.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and one of the biggest things I like about you, Arnie, is we've been friends for a while, and seeing your growth, and early on, like we would always talk about the people that we were seeing online and what was working, what wasn't, what they were doing, and early on, a lot of people that maybe have just come across you are like, well, Arnie's got all this stuff, he must have always had that. I remember early on when you would try stuff and it wouldn't work, and then you could have just quit, but what did you do? You tried something different. And you try something different, and then something started working, and you went with that, and then you built momentum off that, and you kept going, and that's what separates you from all the people that were in the same spot that you were that didn't make it, right? So I mean, so much credit to you, because even though maybe you didn't have a specific process like this to follow, the underlying principles that make this work were the same stuff that you did.
Absolutely, and that kind of I know you're big on validation too, so that kind of incremental validation was really key for me in figuring out where to put my efforts and energy. And when I started out, just a couple of years ago, I didn't really understand, how to really do that and how to put enough effort into testing. And I really didn't have the foundation that I needed yet. So my whole first year in business was understanding that foundation and getting better at figuring out how to see if something works, or how to validate it, how to monetize it, how to see, okay, is this a path I actually want to start going on and stick with? Because guys, the biggest issue I see is people who have 12 different projects like all at once or over the course of a year. Because if you think about it, if you stuck to one of those and was consistent for a year, that is going to hugely increase your chances of being successful with it. That is the number one reason why I've been able to absolutely skyrocket my business this year, is having that focus, really honing in on my expertise with Facebook groups, really being able to develop a product for 11 months now. My course has been out, and it started with 3 lessons, and it cost $37. Guys, like, it takes time, and having that dedication is going to make all the difference in the world. Trust me. So go through this process and understand where you can focus.
Yeah. So I was going to say one more quick side tangent with that. A lot of people talk about Apple and Steve Jobs and how great all that was. What he would actually do is he'd pull all the smartest people together, and he'd have them work and kind of figure out all the things they could do. And they narrow that list down to top 10. And then they would actually cut all the bottom ones off of there and focus on one thing, right? Or maybe 3 things. But Apple doesn't have a ton of products, right? They have only a handful. But just like you said, they were able to focus on that, and that's what caused them to succeed. All right. So a SWOT analysis is something you can use in your business, but we found a lot of benefit in looking at yourself from this way.
Mm-hmm.
So basically you want to look at, for you, what strengths and weaknesses do you have, right? Because understanding yourself then allows you to focus more on the strengths and then put people around you or do things to close the gaps on the weaknesses. And then when you look kind of out in the world, what opportunities exist for you and what threats could come up that could deter you? Because having an understanding of where you're at will then give you a lot more clarity on where you should go and what things you should focus on and what things not to worry about.
Yeah, and if you don't know your strengths and weaknesses, we use a lot of different personality assessments to kind of get that inner look and insights on ourselves. I know a lot of people out there really like the Myers-Briggs personality assessment, but we've actually taken a couple that dive a little bit deeper into how you problem solve and how you process things. The DISC assessment is a favorite of ours, as well as the Colby A.
Yep.
So if you aren't sure, like, I don't know what my strengths and weaknesses are, go out and just grab, I know the Myers-Briggs is a free one, so you can take that personality assessment, or if you're willing to throw like $20 at it, you can take some of the other ones as well, and it'll dive a little bit deeper for you.
Well, I was gonna say, you can also ask a friend. Like I had a colleague I got on a call with yesterday. He's like, kind of going in a new direction with things. I want your perspective. I trust you. What are you seeing? Who do you think I work with? Where do you think my strengths are? And I'll tell you, the people that are close to you, like, they can help you a lot with this.
Yeah.
All right. And then finally, Arnie mentioned this one, but identity shifts. So who are the people that have the life that you're looking for, that have had the success that you're looking for? Like, go find those people and throw your money at them. Like, get close to them, right? Like, work with them, intern for them, pay for their courses, but they've been down that path and they can help guide you. Like, that's one of the biggest things you can do is success leaves clues. Like, go follow that. Don't try to recreate the wheel.
Absolutely.
Through that, right, figure out what skills you need to pick up and, what's some of those other habits or things that they do that you can then start doing today that maybe you're not doing.
Yeah, I think that one's actually been really big for me out of my mind recently. Because as you guys know, one of my biggest goals is go to all 7 continents and have a 7-figure business in 2018. So what I realized is, the shift from going, growing a 5-figure business in 2016 into a 6-figure business now in 2017, the shift between a 5 and a 6 is a whole lot different from a 6 to a 7. So the mindset shifts, the business challenges, the operations is an extremely different set of things I have to deal with and overcome and handle as the owner. So what I really wanted to dive deeper into is, how does a 7-figure business owner think, operate? What do they put up with? What don't they put up with? So I can start aligning myself with more of those characteristics. And one thing I know for sure, 7-figure business owners don't do customer support. So
no, they do not.
Yeah.
Yep. And I know one of the things you did was you started surrounding yourself with people like that. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the biggest things you can do is, like, go and find those people. I mean, there's all these cliches, right? If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest shifts and growth experiences that I've had is, once I got over what I'll call my ego, where, like, oh yeah, I know all of that stuff. Once I kind of got past that and said, let me go find the people that are doing it and let me just learn from them, it's amazing how much that can skyrocket you.
Absolutely.
Go to conferences, go to live events. I mean, it's being an entrepreneur is lonely, and going out to meet people not only gets rid of the loneliness, but also allows you to meet people that are doing better than you, that you can follow and learn from and network with. Creating those partnerships is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, recap.
Quick recap. Whew. All right, so you're going to describe what you want your ideal life to look like. Right, that vision board or some of those different activities, but get clear on the end result that you want to achieve, the end goal. Then you're going to define what are some of the incremental steps or incremental goals that you need to do to get there. That's your roadmap. Then you're going to start figuring out the process. When do you check in? What do you start looking at? How do you operate? Prioritize. There's going to be so many things you could potentially do, but you really want to use the initial activities to help you focus in on what the main focuses are, and then what things can drop off or be delegated. Figure out the key metrics to look at, and then when and how you're going to track those and how you're going to shift based on those. And then ultimately distill and figure out, okay, you're not there yet, but as you said, if you want to be a 7-figure business owner, how do they act? How do they think? And instead of waiting until you're that 7-figure business owner to do it, start acting and thinking that way today, and it's going to be so much easier.
Boom.
So with this, once again, focus is more traction in your business and more clarity in your life. And as Arnie asked at the beginning, what's the number one thing? Go through this process. And if you really commit to going through this process and implementing it over the next 90 days, I promise you that you're going to have more traction and more clarity than you probably had in the previous year.
Absolutely. Love it. Awesome stuff, guys. So make sure you guys go ahead and drop some questions below. I'm going to get this link shared out. So this link is basically all of this expanded and explained.
Yep. So we got 6 different videos that kind of walk through each of those sections in more detail. And what's kind of cool about that, you guys heard a lot from me, and you can tell I'm very analytical, very focused. Those videos are actually Ariana going through it.
You hear from the other half.
So you're going to get the other perspective on this. And what's nice with those is you can watch one video, go and implement the activity, right?
Yep.
Go and create the vision board, and then you watch the next video and kind of go through it from there.
Well, and you can
absolutely
at your own rate. So, you have access to all the videos. So if you want to sit and watch through them all, you can. But if you don't have a lot of time and you want to just sit and watch each 5 to 10 minute video, like one a day, and spread it out over the week, then you can do that too.
Yep. Love it. And what's really cool about this whole process that you guys went through is like how comprehensive all of this is. This isn't sitting around, talking about goals and what's going to make you feel good. It's getting it out of your head and getting them on paper and taking a hard look at things. And I know there's a lot of smart entrepreneurs in here who know the importance of having that hard look at things, taking a look at the numbers, really, really designing the lifestyle, designing the business, and understanding what needs to be improved. And I know you guys are just so big on that true analysis, the no BS approach. So I know it's super appreciated. Thank you guys so much. And everybody out there watching, say thanks, because this is a full course in itself in the last hour, so this is awesome.
I was gonna say, well, that's a big thing. So there's a lot of courses out there with this topic now, and if you guys like those courses or you want to really get invested and get more, go ahead and pay for them. But if you're not, your business isn't at that point yet, this is the stuff that we use with our coaching clients. This is what we include in our courses. This is what we use with, the leaders that we work with.
This is what we do.
So this is what we do.
You guys are crazy for giving this out for free.
Yeah, well, and the big reason we put this out, because we get people all the time that are like, okay, why are you guys giving away that for free? You should be charging for it. And it's like, this is the foundation, right? If you get this right, then we'll have other services and stuff we'll offer you. But so many people miss this step, and then they end up just making everything so much more difficult. So it's like, this is the foundation, the first thing you guys should go through.
Yeah,
absolutely. So guys, go hop in, go through this, get yourself some big wins, hire these guys for some more support. And take the action. That's the most important thing you guys can do. This was a free stream. We should have charged you guys at least $100 to watch this whole thing. But any tips can be sent to Tom and Ariana, and go buy their stuff. Go check them out. Where else can people learn more about you guys too?
Obviously, if you guys like hanging out in Facebook groups, you're in Millennial. We also have our free Facebook group, Family Entrepreneur Life. So if you want to come and hang out with us over there, we do answer questions and, post up different things about goals and planning and time management and family and life in general.
Well, I was going to say, and one of the things there is so love Arnie, love, Millennial, but we're at a different point than like Arnie's at, right? Like Arnie's going to 7 continents in the year. And, one of the challenges that we found is that, we do have different constraints and responsibilities as, parents. So it's not saying that we can't do those things, but what's cool about, all these different groups is that you can get different things from the different groups. Yeah. So like we get a lot of value out of Millennial, and we have some people that are in both groups that get value out of both of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Love it. Super cool, guys. Thank you so much for going through all of this. Super helpful. I love just seeing it laid out so simply and so important that people go and actually do this. So, guys, if you guys are enjoying this one, first up, I asked people to type goals if they wanted this. So everybody that typed goals, the link is down below in the comments, as well as now up top in the description. So we will make sure to follow up for everybody that commented goals and give you guys this full process And yeah, excited for everybody to jump in, make a awesome 2018. Thanks to more clarity in their business. So thank you guys again.
Questions, we'll obviously hop in and answer whatever questions you guys have after the fact.
Yep.
We are around Millennial, and we will get to all of them, even if it takes us an entire day.
All right. Well, it looks like we don't have any questions just yet. Rico says tip jars are cool. We've got some more people saying goals. So yeah, I think you guys are all good to go for now. Thank you so much for your time again, and excited for everybody to jump into this.
Yay.
All right, sweet. See
Good
you
night.
guys.
All right. Bye, guys. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.